And here we are.
And that's it.
Yeah.
That's the launch. Yeah. Today we are joined by Veiled Space, who never asked if you go by any other name. And it's on your screen, so I'm going to say your Veiled Space.
To be fair, that's like a pretty badass name you could go by. That's very like 90s like message board, you know.
Yeah, I think that the main reason is because my actual name, most people can't say it, and when they see it written, they find it's a bit weird. So I just learned with the time. It's
Yeah,
harder.
that's fair. That's fair. I mean, so but yeah, we have a guest here, and actually, it's a guest. We sort of like vary up the episodes, so some are like very Nordic Weasel oriented, and some aren't at all. But this one actually ends up like covering both in a way because our worlds have collided, which is very cool. So, but why don't you start by just kind of doing the intro? If you've been on any like interview show, you've already done this for people. But like, who are you? What's kind of your like your background in gaming? Like, how do you get to like where you are now?
Okay, cool.
So
Yeah,
starting with when you were born, we're kind of working.
yes.
Yeah,
How long do we have for that? I'm kind of old.
Yeah.
Paintbrushes in hand.
Yeah.
Coming out of the womb.
So yeah, actually, so my actual name is João, which is John in English, but it's Portuguese. I'm Brazilian.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And usually I write as JM Beraldo because people don't know how to say João because it has a weird thing on top of the A and all of that. Yeah, that's me. But I'm Brazilian. I'm a writer too, so I have some published novels and all of that. But I've been working as a game designer, video game designer mainly for 25 years, I think, something like that. Uh, a lot of the games I'm working on were none of you would ever know because it was very focused on either Brazilian audience or Latin American and all of that. But there was like a couple of MMOs and a lot of mobile games and some other stuff. But the big names that actually you probably heard about is Assassin's Creed. So the last 4-ish years I was working on was at Ubisoft Singapore. So I was living in Singapore for 4-ish years. So I was working on the Assassin's Creed series. So I was one of the game designers from Mirage, the couple of games back, and I was one of the lead game designers of Black Flag Resynced that it's coming out next month, like a couple of weeks.
All right.
Wow.
I think that makes you like the most famous person we've had on the show, then.
Dang, yeah.
Not famous by connection with the
yeah. Like sort of what do you call it? Like second degree famous. Like you've been involved with stuff that everyone knows, but they might not know your name specifically. You know. Yeah. But it's also a different thing, right? Because like in like a video game team is like a huge, you know, like there's hundreds and hundreds of people involved at all levels because so much of it is like so very specialized. Whereas, you know, when you're doing tabletop design, I assume behind Veiled Space, you're basically like the guy minus like for art or whatever. Yeah. So it's a whole different, right? Like
yes. Actually, so when I started working in at Ubisoft, because it's especially Assassin's Creed, because it's like a huge team, several teams all over the world working at the same time, and all of that. Each game has like 1,000 people working. It felt so weird because I was working in much smaller teams before that. Like I was working in teams that could go for anything from like 5 people to a couple of cases are like 200 people. That's a lot already. And then suddenly there's a team with like 800 people in 5 different countries or something like that.
Yeah. You suddenly have to manage time zones, right?
Yeah, and actually, I had a team like I had one team in Philippines, one in Spain, one in Belgrade, and completely different parts of the world.
Yeah.
But it makes exactly that because you usually you think about lead game designer as the person who is like defining all the game and all that. But we had like 5 lead game designers in the last game in Black Flag because there is a game director, there's a creative director, and there's of course the IP people, like the brand people who are responsible for that. The HQ.
Right. Like so Assassin's Creed several has layers. To be like this and cannot be like this. And...
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's a very but it's kind of funny because the first actual game that I worked on was a space MMO 20 some years ago, and we had kind of big budget air quotes for Brazil.
Yeah.
With a big budget. And then after that, I worked on Facebook games. that in Flash. It's like a completely different
Yeah,
fall
yeah, yeah.
amount of money.
But
And
that used to be for a lot of people. I think that used to be like the way to get some like design chops because the barrier of entry was so much lower, right? Like I guess
yeah,
mobile games kind of took that over now, but
yeah.
like you hear a lot of video game industry people who got their chops like doing stuff like that because it gave you a way to like just build something without having to go through like
Yeah, I think in general, if you want to be a game designer, you have to do your own stuff. You have
Mhm.
to even if it's not like a commercial, it's a great game. It's probably it sucks, but at least you did something. You went through the
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
process
yeah.
of figuring out how to do it and all of that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that even for the, because- I mean, of course, there's like a lot of countries have their own university and all of that. So I know that like US, Canada, some parts of Europe, you can go through the university to learn game design, and you
Mhm.
can even do internship in a big company and all of that. So you have this step
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
learning. But back in my day, we didn't really have the time for that. We didn't have the
Mhm.
opportunity for that. You have to learn on your own and figure it out.
Right, right, right. So what took you? Because Brazil is not typically known as a big like tabletop gaming, like culture. Like tabletop gaming is so heavily dominated, especially online, by like English and Americans,
Yeah.
and then like a step down like mainland Europe. So what is the tabletop scene in Brazil, especially when it comes to like miniatures?
It's actually very weak because it's expensive.
Yeah,
When I
yeah, yeah.
was growing up, like you wouldn't find miniatures easily. Actually, I other than like the very basic board games, I was an
Hmm.
RPG person.
Yeah,
That's what I was much more used to playing different kinds of RPGs, and some of them use miniatures and all that. So my introduction to miniature was finding the very few places where they'll sell miniatures for like D&D or something like that,
hmm.
and that's what we were going to use when we were playing all of that. I actually came across a miniature that I don't know if it was official Warhammer or it was a fake one, that I had no idea what was a Warhammer, but it like looking now back now, I know it was from Warhammer or a fake version of that.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
there wasn't really anything like that because I'm guessing that this probably was just too expensive to import to Brazil.
yeah.
So I was being much more of an RPG person, and that's when I was using miniatures and all of that. Actually, I had friends who had miniature games and mostly board games that I'll be playing, but I
Hmm.
only really started playing miniature games really 5 years ago when I was working at
Hmm.
Ubisoft, because I suddenly moved to Singapore, and Singapore has a very strong miniature scene, much
Huh.
more than RPG. Yeah, it's
That's
actually very
interesting.
very curious. A lot of people play Warhammer there. I don't know if there is a lot of foreign people living there, especially
Hmm.
British
Yeah,
people,
yeah. So you
Oh
because
yeah,
guess.
yeah.
Singapore was a British colony. Now that's what they speak
Yeah,
English
yeah,
as
yeah.
one of the official languages. So I guess that maybe it came from there. I don't know. But
Hmm.
like at Ubisoft, there was a lot of people Ubisoft Singapore that would play miniature games. That's kind of I got introduced by watching people play. We had like our clubs after work. We would just get together to play and all that. And
Yeah,
then I
yeah.
came across Five Parsecs. That's when
Hmm.
all the problems started for me because I started buying too many miniatures.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. See, that's a trap of games that don't require a lot of miniatures because then it makes you actually get more than if you're just building like a
Hmm.
Warhammer army. Because you tell
Yeah,
yourself, "Oh, I just need like 15 guys," and then a year later, your shelves are like drowning in shit,
exactly.
right?
And I didn't used to have like a lot of space before to have miniatures and all of that. When
Yeah.
I went to Singapore, I mean both space and money. Working in Singapore, I was being paying in dollars and not in the Brazilian currency, which is a lot weaker.
Yeah, yeah.
So it became a little bit easier for me for that. But yeah,
Right,
there's a
right,
lot of
right.
people playing things there, and started. I think that I've never been very much into the competitive kind of miniature game. I
Mm-hmm.
like more the cooperative, or so I like the. I wouldn't say story. I would say
Mm-hmm.
more in the sense of
Hmm.
the experience,
Yeah,
more
yeah.
than the competition for I'm going to win and all that. So
Mm-hmm.
when we were watching people play, I was usually asking questions to see, okay, but how can we make in this the other way and all that? And I think when I came across, I had to look at my books. What I think it was Stargrave. Yeah, there were some people there playing Stargrave, and I started playing with them too. So it kind of went from there. But Five Parsecs was my initial drug. That was what really triggered the whole thing.
Yeah. That's a
I'm just gonna
while.
stop 1 sec and just say hi to the
Yeah.
people in chat. And I have a
Who do we
burning
got?
question I need to ask. So we got OMG Rain, good to see you.
Hey.
We got the old T_U3721, good to see you. And Psychic Hazard has made it. I guess he's
All right. We got
rocking the
some.
show.
Yeah. Should pull up
And
the
I just want to say to
comments.
anyone in chat, we'll only pause like every once in a while, depending on like the flow of the conversation. But if you do have questions, definitely put them in, and we will do our best to get to you. Otherwise, yeah, please share your stories amongst yourselves, and I'll just pop things up on the screen as we go.
Yeah, we'll just kind of that way people who are watching can kind of check in.
But
as
what I
well.
really need to know is, while I'm shaking an atlas at you, is Five Parsecs big in Singapore? This is not something I would have known.
Yeah.
No, I don't. I don't think so. Actually, it's very funny because when I went, I mean, I've been to a few stores in Singapore, and when I was traveling around Asia, I always tried to go to some hobby shop to see what they had and all that.
Yeah.
So Singapore, every time that I was talking to the person at the store and something like that, they react with, "Oh, never heard about that."
Yeah.
And but if among the people in the office at Ubisoft and all that, we're kind of always talking about it, showing my videos. I started making
Oh,
them
yeah.
and all that. But what
Yeah,
was
yeah.
funny, I was in Thailand, in Bangkok, and I went to a random shop that I found. I went in and I was looking for it and asked if they had it, and I was like, "Oh, we have all of them." And
Oh
the shop
wow.
on the guy who worked at the shop, he had all, and he knew about the game. He was talking about how he was playing 5 leagues and all of that. So it was very unexpected. I have a very long conversation with him, and that's where I
Yeah.
bought Tactics and I bought the 5 leagues because I
Yeah,
couldn't
that's
find it in Singapore. So yeah, in
right. Well,
Bangkok,
that's
at
so
least there is
weird
at
because
least one shop where there
yeah,
is this
well, that's
guy
the
who really
thing.
likes it.
A lot of stuff is like so like hyper local because you can go to like one store somewhere and like everyone plays Bolt Action, for example, and then you can go to another store where nobody has literally ever heard of it because their store doesn't stock Warlord or whatever. Like even today with the internet, it's still like it becomes very like hyper local, right?
In Singapore, there's quite a few hobby shops that focus on miniatures, and there was a big one that they actually closed a couple of years ago. They were very much into Warhammer, but there was another one that was Stargrave, and there's another one which is some other game that I can't remember. But yeah, it's very like that. Like almost like each shop had their focus on one type of game.
Is there a big model kit building like tank kits and plane kits and stuff in Singapore, or is that?
So I think there is because there are a couple of shops that are huge. There's this whole like the floor to the ceiling. The
Oh yeah.
corridors are basically boxes of that. So I actually
Oh
bought
okay.
a bunch of my games that I use for my kit bashing and all that I bought in Singapore. It's like huge. Like they're kind of like it was probably a warehouse that they made corridors out of boxes where you can walk through it. Yeah.
You don't need
But
to buy walls; you just have enough
yeah,
models.
exactly. But I think there's a lot of people who are very much into Gundam, like Gundam
Oh
figures.
yeah.
So it's a very strong. And, at Ubisoft Singapore, there are a lot of people have their desks. They have several models on top of the
Oh
computer.
yeah. That's always a fun thing when you go to you can see like what stuff people put on their office desk because that's how you can sniff out like the nerds. You see like a D20 or a Space Marine or something, or
Yes,
see some
my
magic cards.
actually never had anything. I just never put anything here.
Yeah. I have a stuffed turtle and a
Uh,
Lego like World War One guy that a friend sent me. That's what I got.
I
But
got like a mommy long legs. Very inspiring.
yeah,
It's
we
from
might be
Poppy
like
Playtime.
bad XM. Also, I have a big ass cat on my desk, so I can't have too much stuff there. It just gets.
Mine is basically just miniatures that I need to paint.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're in the situation where you can actually like paint your desk, then that kind of opens up the clutter.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about Veil Space, both for people who are here and aren't familiar with what it is. Why should everyone be excited about that? And how did you kind of get from this is cool, I want to play this to this is cool, I want to make this? Or was that just a natural like?
Yeah, I think I have kind of a curse that I have too many ideas all the time. So yeah, so Veiled Space is because okay. So backtracking a bit, I wrote a novel 20 some years ago that I published in Brazil, and it was basically at the time I was working in the game. I had some ideas that didn't fit the story of the game, and one of the artists basically told me, "Why don't you write a novel?" And I was like, "Oh." Maybe that's an interesting idea. And I wrote that novel. So and I got published in Brazil, and it kind of like it came from there. But from that, I started working in video gaming industry, and I didn't have time to go back. So it was kind of one of those things that from time to time I'll go back. And because I was playing a lot of RPGs, I started making my own adventures for D20 or D&D adapted, Pathfinder, later Starfinder, and all that. So it was that kind of thing that from time to time I will go back for my RPG stuff or something like that.
Mhm.
When I was in Singapore and I came across Five Parsecs, and I said, "Oh, I can actually it fits that like the fantasy of the spaceship and all that. It's exactly the same thing from that novel that I wrote.
Mhm.
It's exactly the same thing. It's like the story from the first novel was like this: the crew that gets together in a very old ship. That it's actually like a it's basically a UFO, second-hand UFO that they managed to get
Nice.
because the plot of this universe is that humanity found out that there is aliens in space, there's civilization and all that, but everyone is way more advanced. So basically, Earth is using the second-hand technology. It's kind of like the experience of growing up in Latin America, where everything comes from outside.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
So we have
yeah.
the second-hand technology that's already uh, not obsolete somewhere else, but it's a new thing. So it's kind of like that. So the story was basically a group of people together doing jobs, carrying a passenger here and there and all that in this old
Mhm.
ship and all that. And when I saw the rules for the game, I was like, oh, I can make something with that. So I started kind of just rolling, and I always liked the idea of the emergent narrative, like
Mhm.
woven as a concept and as a game designer. So I used it to work a lot of video games that I wanted to make kind of like instead of creating a story, like you're not. I don't like cutscenes in video games. I hate cutscenes.
Mm.
I think cutscenes is the worst thing possible in a game because you're taking the control away from the player. So any kind of story that feels like the player is part of it, it for me
Mhm.
it works better. Right? So I always work it in ways that you can create some kind of mechanic that the player feels like there is a story happening because of that mechanic. So that when I saw that the rule kind of like adapted, helped to make something like that, I was like that's what I'm looking for. So
Mhm.
I just started kind of rolling the character. That's a normal player would be doing that, and then I started connecting the dots, and I say, oh, I can actually make this as a video. And at the time, it was I think it was still like end of COVID, so I was in Singapore. I was alone. I was moving to the other side of the planet. I
Yeah.
of course I started getting to know people in the office and all that, but there was still that lingering effect of COVID because in Singapore it was
Mhm.
closed off for a really long time, and there was a lot of very
Mhm.
restrictive rules going on. And solo play, like a lot of people were playing solo games at the time. So I kind of started connecting the dots, and I say, you know what, I'm going to play to try it. And I made actually a video that I never published it. That was I was just using whatever I had in the kitchen.
Mm.
There was there was
That's a
some like
true
spice.
DIY.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got some like spice vials and
Mm.
Yeah,
put it
yeah,
around, and then the tissue box and whatever it is, and I played and I recorded that to see
yeah.
if
Mhm.
can I make an interesting story of that. And I thought someday I'll publish that. It was very like rough. Like, the characters were not the same. It was like whatever miniature I had. I had a friend to do some 3D printing for me. I bought a couple of Star Wars Legions miniatures, and
Yeah,
that
yeah.
was it. And basically, that started from that. And I decided to make an actual video, and I posted it. People apparently liked it, and I thought, oh, well,
Mm.
maybe that's interesting. But yeah, but anyway, the Veiled Space,
Mhm.
it's a name that I came up with because the first novel was called Veil of Truth. So I
Mm.
Oh,
thought
okay.
to want to I wanted to see something that wasn't Veil of Truth but was spacey.
Yeah,
People
yeah.
could get the feeling of what was the story about, and it was basically a channel where I'm playing games and kind of adapting, editing the video in a way that's an actual story.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I think part of what also makes because there's like a lot of it like people playing games recording on YouTube and stuff is like a big thing, and you kind of get like a wide range because you have some that are very polished and it's very glossy, and, they have effects and all that stuff, and you have other people who are like very like DIY, and it's literally just the gaming table. You can hear the dice clattering. And what's kind of your? Did you have a specific idea for what the channel was gonna feel like, or is it as it is now? Is that kind of like how it just ended up naturally?
I don't know exactly. I use it to watch people playing online, and if I want to learn the rules, if I want to that, it's interesting. There are
Mm,
some videos where it's very clear what I'm supposed to do in the game and all
Mhm.
that. So I'm learning, and
mm,
I'm the kind of person who likes to have examples of how things work. I want to see a few examples of figuring that out. Of okay, now I know what I can do with that.
yeah.
But I because I always wanted to make like tell stories in some way, and at the time I had the time and the space and all of that to do that. I decided to try. So what if I make that as if it was XCOM? Like,
Mhm.
can I replicate the camera movement of XCOM? And actually, I had what I wanted to do was really to make it feel like XCOM with even the bar and the bottom of the HUD, but it was so much work.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah.
If you see my first videos and you see my recent videos, you see that there was a lot of things that I started stopped doing
Mhm.
Yeah.
because it was so much work to edit and do it
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah. And it's
So
one of those too, right? Like, how if I stop doing this one thing that adds like another hour to the process, does that actually make anyone stop watching? Well, probably not.
yeah,
So you have to
exactly.
sort of like slice out like which of these things actually matter, which ones don't matter. Like
Yeah.
it's a whole different. So what is your since you started as an author, what's kind of your like inspirations when it comes to science fiction and like is it movies? Is it books? Is it video games when you're a kid? Like what's kind of like your view of sci-fi? Where did that come from?
I think it's mixed because I watched. I mean, actually, I played with Star Wars way before I watched the movies. I remember that yeah, because
Oh
I
yeah,
had the
yeah.
toys. Like the my older cousin had it, and I kind of got it. And I remember going to a friend's house when I was like I don't know 8 or something like that, and he had a lot of that, the whole collection of Star Wars
Mm.
toys and all that. And he had the episode 4, right? And he showed
Mhm.
that to me. I was like, "What's that? Like, it's amazing." And he at the time was like, "Oh, my older brother lives in the US. He said they have the other 3 episodes there." It wasn't. It was like that was like 1989.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Episodes 1, 2, and 3 didn't exist. But I remember seeing that. I was like, oh, that looks very cool. So eventually, like, when I watched Star Wars, that was the thing that really got me. But not for the Jedi,
yeah. Mhm.
more for the spaceships and the
Mhm.
whole
Yeah,
Han
yeah, yeah.
Solo experience, the bounty hunters, and all of that. And maybe around the same time, I was playing video games and all that. And the game that really got me were space sim games like Wing Commander and
Mm-hmm.
Freelancer later and all that.
Yeah, yeah.
It
Privateer.
yeah, so it was a lot more about those things. But my grandfather, he used to go to the US a lot, and he was the one who started finding RPGs and things like that and bringing it back to me. Like a lot of my English was thanks to that because I was doing English courses that I was learning in school and all that. But I
Mhm.
had so much of those RPG books and things like that coming that I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
consuming a lot of that. That's when I started getting used to it. So I did read a lot of the classics like Asimov and all of that, but I always liked much more of the adventure in space.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
it's the space opera in the sense
Yeah,
of
I was gonna say
uh,
right.
it's less the hard science fiction. I kind of like, for example, the case of Fluid Space. Everything that I write, if you just look on the top side, it's space opera. It's Star
Mhm.
Wars without Jedi, right? But there is some science behind, but
Yeah, yeah,
up to a
yeah,
level because I don't really want
yeah.
to give like I'm not an engineer. I'm not a scientist. You know? I'm probably going to say something stupid if I if I do for that.
You have to, yeah, with anything sciencey, you have to like go this far and then stop because otherwise somebody will point out that's not how neutron stars work or something like
Yeah,
like it's just there to explain the
exactly.
thing.
Yeah, I do some research to note if I'm not saying something stupid. Sometimes I'll ask to my friends who are actual scientists. Sometimes one of them actually
Yeah,
say, "Oh,
yeah,
why don't
yeah.
you do this thing?" Oh, okay,
Right,
cool.
right, right.
But yeah, no, I'm
Um,
not.
yeah, it's an interesting thing because like I usually describe like the Five Parsecs like vibe of sci-fi as like hard space opera because it's very
Mm,
stupid and silly,
Mhm.
but it's also underpinned by like military realism on one end,
mm,
which I think makes it pulls it back just enough that you can have like animal people and weird dumb crap, and people still buy into like So it's the same with Star Wars. Like you have like teddy bears with bows fighting like stormtroopers and stuff. It's dumb as shit. But because especially in the original movies, it's very like everything looks very real, right? So it kind of makes you buy into it in a way that it wouldn't otherwise. Like that's just mine. But
You kind of accept that in that universe, it makes sense that the cute bears with spears are going to fight the armored troops and are going to win. You know, they're going to throw the
yeah,
rock,
yeah.
destroy the armored walker, and it's going to be fine. You know, that's the. But that's the whole thing with the if that universe has that language that you believe in it because it fits to that experience, right?
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
the,
yeah. Yeah, it's like it's I guess it's just like the suspension of disbelief, right? Like these are the
yeah.
rules and the vibes. Like if the stormtroopers touched down and just like massacred the Ewoks, it would feel weird because that's not how Star Wars works. You know, like if you're the hero, you get a chance, and being clever is more important than having like military power or something. You know, so it's a very um like the internal rules of it has to be kind of consistent. Like nerds get like super obsessive about like whether spaceships can do this or that thing, but that's not really like what matters the most. What matters the most is that it feels like consistent as a universe, as a world, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, I saw a few years ago that someone did the whole mathematical explanation of how the destruction of the second Death Star would actually have destroyed the Ender and killed all the Ewoks, and had this whole explanation of how the
Yeah,
mass
yeah,
of
yeah.
the
Oh yeah.
proximity would have destroyed and all that. So yeah, there's always going to be
Yeah,
something like that.
right. That's just a bummer. Like you go back for the next movie and it's just like a wasteland because it got saturated by shrapnel from the Death Star. Like, come on, man. Those are cute bears. I liked them when I was a kid. I still like them. I'm an Ewok defender.
Nice.
So what? Yeah, we're gonna get all the hardest out here. This is where everyone will start like just canceling their subscriptions. So what got you the idea? So I realized maybe we should have led with this because it would have made more sense. But you are working on a bounty hunter Five Parsecs game, right? And which we'll go through Modiphius. I actually got to go through and as an aside, just as a personal comment, because when I read stuff, you can pick up pretty quickly if somebody doesn't speak English as a native language. Because there's certain things, like if a German speaker is writing in English, there's certain things they'll give them away. And I was having a hell of a time. I could tell that you had really good English, but it wasn't your native language. But having a hell of a time identifying from how you were writing where you're actually from. And now it makes way more sense. But so what got you the idea? Obviously, like Star Wars is kind of an obvious one for bounty hunters, and there's definitely more than a little sniff of Mandalorian in there. But what kind of got you the idea that like bounty hunters was like the thing to match up to like Five Parsecs, whether as a rule system or as a universe or as because you also kind of have your own universe going, right?
Yeah, it's so backtracking a little bit. The part of bounty hunter is really something that I really liked. The idea of the space bounty hunter. Like Cowboy Bebop is one of the few animes that I watched, and I loved it. Like I've never been very much into it. I eventually married a Japanese. So I kind of got.
Okay, so
I had to go through all the.
It's a really good show. Yeah.
But yeah, but I wasn't really ever really much into anime.
Yeah.
I only watched like Cowboy Bebop, and I think in the US it was called Macross or Battle.
Robotech, yeah.
Robotech.
Yeah.
I heard Robotech was big in Brazil.
Yeah, so I don't even remember when I watched it. I think it was on TV for a while, and I remember watching it when I was a kid. But most of it, I only watched it in the US years, very long later. But anyway, I was always into the idea of the space bounty hunter, and that novel that I wrote, actually, when I started writing, it was about a bounty hunter. So I started writing a story from a bounty hunter's point of view, and I realized that the story wasn't about him; it was about the people he was chasing. And I completely changed it. I rewrote the book with the point of view of the people on the ship. And years later, I started writing short stories about this guy. Which it's now is like the freebie book that you can download for free to join the mailing list and all that. So when you go to Field Space, there's the site you can download the book and all, and you join the mailing list. So I always really liked that idea of the space bounty hunter. I always found that the fantasy of the space bounty hunter is very cool. You can go to different worlds and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So I was actually, when I spoke to Modifius the first time, that was almost 3 years ago, I think.
Wow.
It has nothing to do with Five Parsecs. It was about the RPG. So that started the TD20, how they call it, the word builders. So where you can use the
Oh yeah,
2D20
yeah, yeah.
rules to create your own and all that. So I started having this conversation with them about adapting my universe for that. I made it on my own. I was already running that at Ubisoft, and I was testing for a bunch of people from Brazil too, and all that. And I pitched that them, and basically they say that it's cool, but you're not known. RPGs are very difficult to really to do something like
Mm-hmm.
that, which makes total sense. Like they gave me very good feedback. But
Mm-hmm.
when we were chatting, I was like, I have another idea about the Bounty Hunter game
Yeah, yeah,
that I
yeah, yeah.
wanted to see if it makes sense. The reason was because when I started playing Five Parsecs for the channel, I didn't have enough miniatures, and I didn't want to have a lot of work on my editing. I wanted to tell a story, but I
Mm-hmm.
knew that if I had 6 characters and expanding to 8, that would be a problem. So I on purpose reduced it to 4. So that's why most of the episodes I only have 4 characters there. So that was working. What happens that during that I started thinking, what if it's a little bit closer to a RPG, where I have
Mm-hmm.
only one character? So it started kind of like from that. If is it possible to have only one character when playing the game? When I got to that conversation about the RPG with Modifius people and all that, I already have kind of like a cycle of how a bounty hunter would be, game would be, because I had several different versions of games, bounty hunter games that I wanted to make, but I wasn't really sure of how exactly to do it. Both video games and actual board games,
Mm-hmm.
and it kind of just fit. I realized that the loop, if I changed how the loop works, it could work in some way. It makes sense. Like just adapt the same kind of vibes. It's the same sort of universe. You have that space opera with a mix of Firefly, a mix of Star Wars, mix of that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So it kind of started from there, and actually when I pitched, I didn't have any rules. with it. I have a very basic loop. I made a PowerPoint just to show the idea, and what they told me was like, cool, but you need to actually make something.
Mm.
And I made a series for Veiled Space. There's 5 episodes where I was actually designing the game.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's kind of how it started, and that's as soon as you start doing it, and that's the thing with game design. Right? You have the idea, and when you put it on paper and start testing, you realize, oh, that sucks. So a lot of it came from that. You die very easily in the game if you only
Mm-hmm.
have one character, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially early in the game. So how can I fix that? And then I think I don't remember which one of I think it was Statics that had the wounds. It's like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
perfect. That's
Yeah, yeah,
2 points.
yeah.
That's what I'm going to. Can I adapt this? So it
Right,
was a
right.
bit of that. So it started really as I already wanted to make a bounty hunter game. I didn't really think about a miniature game until I started playing Five Parsecs. And
Mm.
in that conversation with Diffie, I suddenly realized, oh, can I can I
Yeah,
teach
yeah.
that connection here?
Well, that's such an interesting thing because it's basically like the material conditions, I guess you could call it, of what you're doing. Because like each decision, like okay, we're gonna have one character, maybe a sidekick, right? Well, in
Hmm.
that case, that means a whole bunch of other things because you can't put 20 guys on the other side.
Yeah.
And like you said, you have to figure out a way of survivability because in a normal game, like especially Five Parsecs, characters die like very easily, as
Hmm.
annoyed nerds in my inbox tell me often. Because there's 6 of them or whatever, 8 or however many you got. So each decision starts like narrowing down the amount of space. Like, like in your game, you go much more into detail with like how story bits hook back into each other,
Hmm.
which means then you have to back off on some other bits. So there's less like large, like galaxy scale kind of stuff because that stuff isn't relevant to the experience. So like each decision and thing starts like pinning you down into like certain. Does that make sense? Like,
Hmm.
as you're making the choices, it kind of like removes other choices to make as you're kind of going through the design process.
Yeah, and it's about when you're designing the game, it really depends on what's your intention and what exactly you want to do. But
Mm,
because I wanted to do the experience of the bounty hunter, a lot of bit, I went back to the references. I was watching Cowboy Bebop. I think Mandalorian came around that same time. I don't remember if it was before or after. But I also had my novels and all that, so I started going to first season of Mandalorian, my book, and all of that, and trying to turn that into a system. If
Yeah,
this is a
yeah,
flow chart, what happens? Like
Yeah.
how would that work? I have a lot of like I have a Miro board. I don't know if you guys use Miro. It's
Mm.
kind of like a virtual
Yeah.
whiteboard. A lot of flows trying to understand how different series and stories I had. I don't.
You once ruled the realms with dice and a sword, painted goblins till tea, then your minis were stored. You grew up, got a job, bought a flat, wore a tie, swapped dragons for deadlines, your brushes went dry. Now the dishes are done and the kids are in bed. You climb to the attic to raise the undead. Crack open the paints that you swore you'd outgrown. The smell of acrylic, it feels like you're home. There's grey in your beard, even more on your head, but you're splashing some colour on plastic and lead. So welcome back, General. What took you so long? Your hobby's still here. It's the place you belong. The Bedroom Battlefield's tabletop miniature hobby podcast. Find it at bedroombattlefields.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
I have a old science fiction book called Santiago, which is about a bounty hunter chasing like the most wanted person in the galaxy and all of that, which is an amazing book. It's from 1980 something. Don't remember the guy's name, Mike something.
Mm.
Anyway, it's a famous book from the 80s. Uh, Mike Resnick. And I basically started going. How would the experience of if I turn all those stories into a system, into a flow? How would that work?
Mm.
And of course, first attempt didn't work out. So the version that's on the videos that I made 2 years ago, they are nice as a video, but as a game, it sucks because it was you roll dice and there's a chance of having trouble, but it's so there was a lot of playing around with the rules until you actually get somewhere. But
Mm.
that's because my intention was to to turn the experience of bounty hunter from a science fiction movie or game or something like that into a system and into an actual game. So yeah, I mean it started much more with the experience as the feeling that you're
Yeah,
a
yeah,
bounty
yeah.
hunter than anything else.
And that's an interesting because you'll get like especially with tabletop design. I'm not going to opine on video game design because I don't have any experience in the field. But when you read like designer notes and listen to interviews with people, you'll get people who are very like mechanically oriented. They start with like a mechanic they really
Yeah.
like or a dice system, and you'll have others who are very much starting with like the vibe or the story. Or in historical gaming, it might just be
Mhm.
like historical simulation. And it's always interesting to see where people kind of like come at it because I think often I'm more of a mechanical designer. Like I find
Mhm.
the mechanics more interesting, and then the vibes will just kind of be whatever I'm like interested in at the time.
Mhm.
Whereas coming at it from the other side of things makes it interesting, right? Because there's definitely when I was reading through the through your game, it was so clear that like there's games you can read and they read okay, but you don't really understand like what the game feels like until you play it. And there's other games where like the vibes and the experience come through immediately just by reading. And as soon as I started seeing like, oh, this thing can result in like having to go to another planet, and when you get there, that can result in. I was like, okay, I understand 100% what playing this game feels like before I've like put a dude on my table.
Mhm.
So like the vibes are like really strong, I think. And that's like a really cool thing. So like I said, I tend to think more from the opposite end of things, where I start like with the mechanics. Like Five Parsecs is a very like the mechanics are very clear in a way because there's not that many of them in the core. The combat
Mhm.
system. I think you can boil down to like 3 index cards, right? Like, and the mechanics aren't interesting because they kind of weren't intended to. So the atmosphere and the vibes comes from like all of the other craft.
It became a system that's it's easy to adapt it to different vibes, different
Yeah,
stories
yeah, yeah.
depending on what you want to do.
Mhm.
Yeah, I had a lot of arguments, especially early in the career, with other game designers who were in different parts of this spectrum of more into the
Yeah, yeah,
story
yeah.
part or the mechanic part. But I really think it really depends on the intention. I
Mhm.
worked in that there were match 3 games for mobile. You have to think about the mechanic first, and then you think about the story if there is a story on top of that. But
Yeah,
it,
yeah,
it,
yeah.
but it really so I use it to, because I'm a writer too. Of course, I end up going to the side of the narrative. But
Yeah.
I did a lot of how we call it, presentations and things like that, talking about game design. And like I said, I hate cutscenes. Cutscenes is the worst way of telling a
Mm.
story. But there is this graph that I learned years ago in an event in the US that says the text is the cheapest way of teaching a story in a video game, but it's the worst because no one reads.
Oh yeah.
And the
Oh, yeah.
most expensive but the most effective way of telling a story is a mechanic. Is how it works. And the
Mm.
example that I usually use is that if you're making a game about, I don't know, Aztec Empire with magic, you're going to do something that you'll have to use blood sacrifice to gain mana, to something like that. It's
Mhm.
a quick example of how you present a story using. And I usually prefer to think much more about the experience and how it tells the story. But
Mhm.
like, for example, when I'm looking at Five Parsecs now, all the variations, five leaves and all that, I look at it and think, oh, I can't do that thing. If I just do this change, actually, I get apart from 5 leagues with 5 parsecs and something that's mentioned in tactics, and getting that together with something else,
Mhm.
it becomes a new thing.
Yeah, and that's a big part of because one of the things that's always been like really important to me is that each of the games is not just a reskin. Like it's not just the same thing, but they're called something else. Like the
Mhm.
mechanics need to change. Like tactics is meant to be more like a military game. It's like
Mhm.
Vietnam in space kind of. So having things like troops being suppressed or pinned down, or morale checks for your player troops and stuff like that is required to get the experience there. But in Five Parsecs itself, it would feel weird because it's more, space adventure, space opera kind of
Mhm.
thing. Like Han Solo might take cover, but he's not really like pinned down by like that's not how the fiction kind of works. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, and part of it is also, and you understand this as a game designer, like if the rule goes on the page and it says that to do this, you do it this way, there were 3 more options that were just as good often. And in the end, like one of them has to be on the page. Maybe you
Yeah.
take the best one and it can go in a book as an option, but like there's multiple ways you could have done it. And sometimes you like hang on to those and like save them for like a different day, right?
Yeah, it's funny because sometimes you see someone make a comment about it. Like you publish the game, it came out, and someone say, why didn't they do this other thing? And you, as the game designer who worked through the process, you know why. And maybe there is like a billion reasons. Could be because that would have to increase the cost of the production. Maybe
Yeah.
because you did try it, but it didn't work because of some other thing. And
Mhm.
it's, yeah, sometimes you kind of feel like you want, want to. No, there's a reason why we did this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Hard
yeah,
to explain, but there's a reason why we cut
yeah.
this or did this other thing.
Right. Sometimes it's vibes. It just felt better.
To quickly answer that, someone was asking if the game it's the bounty
Yeah,
hunter
yeah.
game. It's in playtest, and yeah, you could talk about it. It's okay. You can mention it it's in
Yeah,
playtest.
yeah.
So yeah,
Did
there's
I get the
playtest.
name right? Like, it is 5 rewards from the bounty, right?
5 words to the bounty. At least
5
for now.
war.
I don't know if that's going to be the the
Well,
five
yeah, because
words.
sometimes there's like a like kind of a working title. So,
Okay.
but
Yeah,
yeah,
because
so
it's
yeah,
it's right in there. I needed to have a name when I made the first video, and I went a few names at the time. I decided to go with that, and
yeah, yeah,
it's kind of like for now at least that's the name. So we'll
yeah, yeah.
see how
Well,
it
it's one
goes.
of those. It gets the point across, right? Like you can see the name and you're like, oh, okay,
Yeah,
I get what it's gonna be.
yeah.
Like there was a guy who told me once, from a book publisher, that the title of the book should always just tell you what you're going to get in the book, because then nobody is going to pick it up and like be mad at because they thought it was like a romance story about elderly people in Hungary, and it's actually just like a space adventure about lizards. Like, so if there's lizards in space adventure, your book title should reference lizards in space somehow. And besides, like, why wouldn't you do that if you have a book about lizards in space? You're selling yourself short. So one thing I wanted to ask you about design wise is I kind of alluded to it a little bit. You have a lot of what I like to call hooks in the game, where you do a piece, you do a mission or something, and that leads to something. And that then can set you off on like having to go to a different planet or having to go find another character or having so each element like drives it connects back into a different part of the game. You go to this place and you find something there which now sends you back to the previous. So it creates this very like I don't know what you call it, like integrated experience where the story kind of builds very aggressively, as opposed to like base Five Parsecs tends to just kind of like let each mission stand on its own, right? Like you do get some hooks, but not all that much. So what's your thoughts behind that, or what kind of?
Yeah, it has to do with that experience in the video games. So I always really wanted to have. Okay, what happened is some people have a lot of easier time connecting the dots, right, and telling a story. And I know that I'm a writer, so I have the muscle of doing that because I've been practicing that muscle of connecting the dots and writing story of that. So, for example, with my first season of Five Parsecs, the videos, there's a lot of stuff that I was trying to connect later because it didn't make sense why that thing happened back there, where I only had the idea like months later. Oh, I can connect this thing to that, but I already had a video out. So
Yeah.
I always wanted to see if is there any kind of tool that I can add to the story in a way that helps people to connect the dots. So on the I think it was one of the expansions for Five Practice, you have the connecting the additional connections for tables and all that, and I think that was a very good idea because it helps a lot in that kind of thing. How you connect this thing with something that happened previously and all that.
Yeah.
I was actually on the version of the rules that I was writing. I was already considering having a table that you fill out with names and things like that. And then when I bought Planetfall and I saw that you do that, I was like, "Ha, perfect! That's exactly." I wasn't sure if I
Yeah.
can I do that. And then I saw that you did that with the creatures. And I was like, "That's perfect. That's exactly what I was looking for."
Yes.
So I think that there's a lot of this kind of thing that helps with connecting. I remember, so there's a video game conference in the US called GDC, Game Developers Conference.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I went there like 20 years ago or something like that. And there was this, I think she was a PhD in narrative or something like that, interactive narrative. And she was presenting a paper that was basically talking about a system that would make RPGs. Usually in a computer RPG, we have thousands of quests happen at the same time. And you totally forgot that you had to save the princess that the castle was on fire because you have to collect 5 hearts from the worm and the flower or something like that. And she created a system that basically was a system that runs behind the game, where it reads how many quests you have and controls the number of quests you get by adapting the story. So if you had 3 quests already and you speak with a quest giver, that quest giver, instead of giving you a new quest, he's going to say something connected to the quest you already have. And I found that's amazing idea. So that and it was like academic paper basically. So she was presenting there in a separate course, and that thing stuck with me. So like, if we have something like that in any kind of game, it really helps to have a some kind of connection. So solo RPGs have been doing that, like Mythic.
Yeah,
Game
with
Master
like I
Emulator
forget
and
what
all
it's
that.
called in Mythic, but yeah, I know what you mean. Like
Have the threads and the characters and all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
occasionally, just to explain to people who are listening, occasionally the system will like call back to you. Kind of like have lists of people and places you've met before in your game, and it can link back to like any of them essentially.
Yeah. And so anyway, having that kind of thing, it really helps to connect. In this case, because the bounty hunter game is about bounty hunting. It's not an add-on to Five Parsecs. It's not like
Yeah.
you're playing Five Parsecs and you have a sequence of quests that you're doing. I wanted to make it feel like it's an investigation. You're doing the process like just like in the movies and the animes and books and all that. It's that flow of looking for information, finding a lead, and getting the lead that leads you to another lead, and that's false. So you ambushed and all that until you eventually have a showdown. That kind of experience, it made sense to be more guided than what is, for example,
Like it
in
hooks
Five
back
Parsecs.
in.
Yeah.
It's actually one of the probably the biggest mistake in the Five Parsecs book is And this is like an example of how like what you create as a designer and what fans take out of it may be completely different. Because in my mind, the way quests work in the basic Five Parsecs book was that it was supposed to be, here's a quest. So now you go and come up with what the quest is and what it's about in your story. The rules are just there to like modify the mission slightly. And everyone looked at that and said, that sucks ass. What we wanted was special scenarios or new enemies or special loot, which is why in 5 Leagues, quests have more structure and special objectives and stuff. So it's one of those cases where like what might be perfectly obvious, especially when you're, working on your own, there's like you have feedback, but in the end you're making the decision. Sometimes your decision is not what like most of the fans would want it to be.
Yeah, but it has to like play test, for example. Talking about I have the play test going on now with the Bounty Hunter game, and I got some feedback that clearly people like they were having fun, but the description I was like, I don't think that person is playing the game right. It's like, what should I do about that? So
yeah,
it does
we
happen.
Yeah, we did an episode. I am so sorry. I forgot to feed Lancelot at 3:00. It's an hour past, so he is furious with me.
No.
There's dry food in my office, and he is. But we are coming up on, we're winding down. Yeah, we just did an episode about playtesting and like sorting through, because you'll get amazing feedback. You'll get that you never thought about, like, oh my god, this guy has totally. You'll get feedback that's good, but it's not you can't use it because well, now I can talk about it, for fuck's sake, because when we did the episode, I couldn't talk about XCOM. So we had a guy who sent in this thing. I was like, well, the AI system, what if you had like a card system and you could have different actions, behaviors on the card deck? And it was one of those, we looked at each other and like, that's really cool. It would probably be awesome, but we can't do that when we're like, whatever, a month away from this thing going to the printer. So it's a great idea that just isn't usable. And then you get feedback that it's just like the person read the wrong game. And they didn't understand some, like, we had a rule in there, and I don't mean to call somebody out. So if this was your feedback, I think you're amazing. But this person, there was a rule in there that like, if a grenade goes off in a space, the explosion doesn't fit, it's slightly stronger. Just, it's abstracting it out.
Yeah.
And the guy had a bunch of questions like, well, what if it's a 2-inch wide corridor? Just should the blast like get longer down the corridor, and should it blah blah blah? It's like, no man, we're just playing toy soldiers. It's all right. Like, it's just a +1 if it doesn't fit. Like, come on. So with playtest, and the big realization I had, and this was like, sometimes, especially when you do things independently, you have to like stumble into things that you wouldn't if. So when I saw like the playtest stuff, because when I've done playtests, it's always just been like, here's the file, here's kind of like the level the game is at right now. Go like break it and go do stuff, because that's how I like to do things. I want to set up my own scenario and pick my own guys and set it up and see what happens, and then I'll give you feedback. But when I saw how like Modifius had done the XCOM playtest, there was none of that. It was very like, here's like a slice of the rules, and here's like a list of like questions. Like, how did the weapons feel? Were they too strong? Were they too weak? How did the scenarios feel? It was very structured, and I was like, oh, is this how like real people do this? Like, I've been doing this for like 15 years now, and I didn't think you could do that, It was like, oh, I might have to make a spreadsheet.
In video games, because usually you have a QA team, the quality assurance, so they do that kind of thing. But yeah, I had to learn a lot of those things, that sit beside the person playing and don't say anything, just see what happens, and then ask questions that don't feel like you're asking why, because why feels like it's too aggressive, and the person will try to defend themselves. I have to say that you're not the game designer, because people feel like they don't want to hurt you, so they don't want to say that. There's a lot of
it's so important to get feedback. It's why sometimes you'll see with like board games and stuff like that, or RPGs, a game will come out and people will say, oh, we played tested like 100 times, but all of those 100 games was the guy who wrote the game and his friends. They all know how to play the game, and it's never going to even occur to them to do it wrong, because the guy who made it was there to show how to do it right. It's so important to get like out in front of people who have no idea about any of that stuff. All they have is what it says on the page, and they're going to get it wrong, or they're going to misunderstand, or you didn't write it right,
Exactly.
and that's one of those things that's just like, I think if you're like up and coming, especially in like tabletop design, you just have to kind of like learn those lessons like the hard way. Like you have to, like, I know one of the things I think I bonked you on the nose a little bit about when I was providing feedback was like something as simple as being like very specific with like terminology, which can saves like a ton of trouble, right? But it's one of those things you just have to like learn over experience, right? Like
Yeah, you made that
especially
comment on my document saying that you
yeah,
should establish what that word means early because otherwise there's going to be a lot of pain for you. So, yeah, good to know.
yeah. Like one of the pieces of feedback we got for XCOM was I think I'd said something like. This gives a bonus to the roll to injure an alien, and somebody pointed out, like, well, injure is not a word in the rules. You say
Yeah.
wounded or killed. So
Mhm.
what does it mean to be injured? I'm like, well, all right, let me go.
But that's kind of funny because in video games I had a lot of that, and that's why I usually try to do that, not use different
Mhm.
words, because usually who's checking that? Because in video games, usually, I mean, at least when it's actual company, not just two friends playing game, you have to write the document and explaining the thing because that's
Mhm.
what the QA team is going to use to test, is what the programmer is going to
Yeah,
use
yeah,
to
yeah,
program.
yeah,
Animator may be using that. So sometimes if you're not very clear and you use something like that, that you use damage or
Mm.
wound or injury, they'll question what does that mean.
right, 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 right. No, that makes
There,
total sense. But it's one of those things you just have to like learn either through an institutional process or just by like messing it
yeah,
up and coming back to it, like
yeah.
and especially coming from RPG stuff, which is I think a lot of people start with RPGs, right? Like because it's just more accessible, it's more readily
Mhm.
available around the world. But RPG games often don't have very like precise design because in a role playing game you have a GM there who can just like smooth over the edges or tell you like how it's supposed to work or how it's going to work
Mhm.
this time. With a minis game, I think there's a strong emphasis that you're just sitting like the rules need to work,
Mhm.
quote, because that's what you got. Like you're not playing it with another person, and if it's a competitive game, obviously it has to work. Otherwise, you
Yeah,
can spend
I
like
have to
2 hours
work.
arguing about.
I think I read. I think maybe you wrote about something like that in your blog a long time ago, talking about how some rules are becoming more like RPGs or something like that. Yeah, I remember reading that because but it's very true because if you're in a board game, if you're buying a box with the rules have to be very direct, very clear,
Mhm.
very obvious. That's how it works. But in RPGs, there is like depending on the type of game. But I know people like I have a friend who's a game designer with years of experience, but he's very much into RPG, and he hates any kind of RPG that is not clear. Like, why is this not
Mm.
clear? It changes all the time. Like, it should have been very clear.
yeah, 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 yeah.
It's more like the board game sort of. I think even like D&D, depending on the edition of Dungeons and Dragons, you have different ways of doing it. Like, the older games were much more like it's open. You come up
Yeah,
with
yeah, yeah,
whatever you
yeah.
want, and then they try to do something that's a bit more like board game. It's super clear. That's how it works and all
Yes,
that.
and then everyone gets mad because to them they had already figured out what it meant, and now
Yeah.
you're telling them that it's like I forget there was a whole thing in I don't remember it was 3.5 or fourth edition or where it was, but people were arguing about like the rules now technically allowed you to like leg sweep a gelatinous cube to knock it over, and it's one of those things of like
Yeah.
like if you're
That is beautiful imagery,
it
though.
is yeah like I guess it just like tips over like
Yeah.
is it distressed now that it's on its side like um but it was such a like rules versus fiction moment because like
Mm.
on one hand like your reaction to that I think basically says something about you as a gamer because one reaction is well there's a attack that lets you like half a creature's movement if you do X, Y, and Z, and that works because of course it works, that's how the rules are.
Mhm.
And then there's another argument of like well it's a gelatinous cube, you're probably not going to want to like football kick it like
Yeah.
but both of those can't be true at the same time without like the intervention of a GM or like an ability list that's like 50 pages long because that's a list of all the things. But yeah, it's just like such a perfect example of like of that kind of thing. I think a lot of RPGs, especially like spells and powers, like I used to play a lot of White Wolf games, like vampire and stuff,
Mm.
and they're dreadful about it because it's just like half a column worth of like flavor text about how you can read minds and see invisible things, and then it'll in there somewhere there's a dice roll and it sort of vaguely describes what that does. as opposed to just saying, here's like the
Mhm.
5 things it definitely does, and the rest is up to you. Like, yeah, it's a pet peeve of mine for RPG design. Like, it's
Yeah,
okay for the rule book to just make sense.
yeah, older D&D, they tended to be more like that, and I think they slowly started going to make more clear. I like to do something to test the game master, depending on who it is. I'll play a sorcerer or something like that can use shocking grasp, which the description says you have electricity on your hand, and you attack someone, you cause electricity damage, right? Okay. And you have a weapon called the flail, which is described as being made of metal, and it's heavier than a mace. And the
Right.
mace is described as having a wooden shaft with a metal head. And the only reason you would have a flail is because the flail is made of metal, because they have exactly the same stats, but the flail is heavier. The test is, if I use shocking grasp holding my flail and I hit someone with it, can I cause damage? Some people love it, some people hate it. So
Yes,
yeah.
see, that's the perfect thing, because it's the same. It is the important part of the spell that you have to physically touch it, because it's magic, and magic works anyway which way. Or is this a simulation? You create electricity.
Yeah.
I had a discussion with a guy playing Rollmaster, and there was a level 1 spells in Rollmaster are more like cantrips in D&D. And there's a spell that lets you heat the temperature of water. It's like the lowest possible spell when you're learning fire magic. You can just heat up like a pot of water. And the guy asked, could I use this spell to heat up like a guy's eyeballs? Because they're made of water. And I was like, that is metal, but also that's not what a level 1 spell does. Like, sorry, man. It's like, so, but yeah, it's sort of like the yin and yang of like game design, right? It's like vibes versus mechanics.
Yeah. In an RPG, if you have a narrator there, a GM or whatever, you can, depending on the situation at the moment, where it makes sense, you can, yeah, sure, you can do it. Or if you're playing a solo game, you can kind of like do a
Yeah,
little bit of adjusting there. And
there's a specific reference I put in the tactics rulebook for Five Parsecs, actually, which is something like a really clever trick only works once. Like, if you figure out that one time you can do something to hack and overcharge the batteries on the combat droid and explode it, let them have it that one time. But if you keep trying the same move, it's lame, and it either doesn't work or the rolls should be more difficult, because it's easy for like cleverness to end up then circumventing like the reason you're sitting and playing a game. So
I do have a question for your videos, because you do a lot of voice acting in your videos, a lot of voices. You probably use some sort of sound modification to do some of it, or you're very talented. I'm not sure which.
no, there is the software that I use is like, it's not really that different in that doesn't have a lot of tools for audio. I mean, now they have AI and stuff like that, but I don't like to use them.
Yeah.
So the basic things that I was doing was just increasing and reducing the pitch. So if when it's a woman, I'll increase the pitch. Or if, like Harley, the alien, that his pitch is like 6 or 7, super high, so he sounds like a different voice. And if it's like the bigger guys and all that, I'll just drop it to like -2 or something like that. But I try to do voices, and it's like 30 years of playing RPG, so it's
Yeah.
so I'm not the kind.
So you never had any you never had any acting
No.
experience then? Do you just that's just something just from gaming over and over again? Kind of, because the characters have a lot of life to them.
Yeah.
So I've always been curious.
My closest acting experience was when I was in college, and people from my class, they wanted to pretend there was a fake professor giving class to the first week of. So they told me I was the oldest guy, and they said, can you go there and pretend to be the professor? It's like, how? It was a geography or something like that, and I was kind of dressed up because I was going to a job interview. So I was like, there's not going to fit. So I created a character like in 5 seconds, like RPG, went in, and I hold the class for like 15 minutes until the actual professor came in. It was fun.
Wow.
But yeah, that's
the wonderful skill of being a game master.
Nice.
It prepares you to just kind of like bullshit on your feet.
Yes. Yeah, a lot of improvisation basically. But yeah, it's basically RPG. I never really did any kind of class.
I'll admit, when doing meetings, on impromptu topics at work when I was at the office. Game mastering experience came in handy more than once to just like keep a room going and like.
Yes, it's people don't talk about that, but RPGs teach you many ways of how to bullshit people. No, but but yeah, Lindsay.
Well, and just to circle back to the beginning, because you mentioned like learning English partially from reading, you know, big, like pretty technical books when you think about a lot of like gaming books and RPG books. Like I remember, you know, I grew up in Denmark. We have pretty good English education in school, but still, like you could tell in class which were the kids who played Warhammer and D&D and which, because they read all of these books and it just helped your vocabulary so much. You could just even if you were sometimes saying weird shit that nobody knew, because you know regular kids don't know like a bunch of words like hand-to-hand combat or some stupid thing, but you know, just exposure to the vocabulary, it's one of those things that like people say the same with video games. Like a lot of people around the world improve their English playing video games as well, because you just get exposure to the language being used and you get to. So I don't know if you've ever done the like life skills from tabletop gaming episodes. Did we do that?
I think
maybe
we did.
Maybe I feel like
a long time ago, like last year.
Maybe we should circle back to it because language skills is actually like 100%. I remember like being I don't know how old I was, 14, 15, something like that, and getting these. It was a second edition AD&D rule book. My grandparents got me, you know, the 3 big hardcovers, and I was just like lost and mesmerized in them and like sitting there chewing through them. They were like well above, you know, my level in English, but you just learn so much because if you're, especially as a kid, because you just want, like, you see something like that, it's just the coolest shit you've ever seen in your life, and you must learn, so you just figure it out, and it's such a it's like a side effect of gaming, but like so, I'm often kind of like suspicious of like claims of like, oh, you know, playing games can like improve your this or that by 15% or whatever. Like the study is often like pretty thin, but I absolutely for language, it's 100% true.
Yeah, I met a long time ago. I don't know if she's a game designer or a researcher, but Jane McGonigal. So she has a book called "Reality is Broken," and she had a lot of talks about exactly how you actually learn very important skills just by playing video games and RPGs and things like that. And it was very interesting, like, going over the book when she's going over those things, like how playing a World of Warcraft will help people to learn how to organize everyone for a raid, or even like the
that's true.
your items in the bag or something like that.
Yeah.
It's the kind of thing that can really make a difference. But the case with English is the same. Like I mentioned my grandfather used to buy all those RPGs and things like that to me. And I remember one time he started asking specific questions to me, and I was replying in English. He wanted to see, and he was like, "How do you know those words?" Your fault.
Yeah. No, it's absolutely true. You know, and especially like for older games to learn, were not necessarily written for kids. They're kind of written for like, you know, high school or college students, or because that was kind of the target audience, right? Like, so you get kind of like a different level of English. I'm a big proponent when it comes to language stuff that you should always try to like read and listen to like the most difficult thing you can still kind of like follow along with, because that's how you really like push your ability to learn stuff like that. So. Well, we're sort of winding down on like an hour and 10. So any like closing? Oh, sort of abrupt, but we're bad with time management. Any kind of what's kind of your like where are you at now that you feel with the rules, and kind of what's your
so the play we're ending the play test, like phase 1 play test ending the end of the month. And what I sent people was they have 6 characters, I think. I created. They don't have the creation rules, so I created 5 or 6 characters, and the very basic core. Like it's you get a bounty to chase, you can do favors to people and all of that, and one of the new features, the mechanics, which is the urban exploration, where you're going around the town and talking to people, and things can happen. Which, by the way, was inspired by Guard of Traitor's which is
nice.
It was a completely unrelated conversation that I was having about something else, and I thought, oh, wait a minute, can I do that? So I started studying Guard of Traitor's. Like, oh, I can kind of use the same concept, but in 5 Parsecs. So anyway, I sent that,
Mhm.
and my expectation was that every month will be a new package with more rules. But the feedback that I got so far was very good, and I kind of already know what's not really working. So I did some tweaks during the month. So I'll do an update of the rules when a lot of people are asking me, or like there are a couple of people who are very unfortunate on their roles, and they were taking so long to manage to get like the basic things. And I was like, okay,
Oh
there's
yeah,
something
yeah,
wrong. So I already kind of did a lot of those tweaks during the month that I feel like it's already made a huge difference. So my intention is after this month, I'll have like a week or two to go over the feedback that I haven't gone over yet, do some changes. I'm going to send a new pack with more stuff, more rules on it.
yeah.
Give people a month more or less for that, and we'll see how it goes. Hopefully, it will by the end of the next month or something like that will work, but it's going to depend a little bit on how things work out with it. And in the middle of that, I'm getting triggered for other ideas. So I started writing
Oh,
other
yes.
games, some that are related with 5 Parsecs, some that have nothing to do with 5
Yeah,
Parsecs.
yeah.
I'm in a moment now because decided to focus on both writing and doing my analog games and all of that. So I kind of have the moment where I detox it from working on big games, video games,
Nice.
leaving the triple A's behind, and can
Yeah,
actually
yeah, yeah.
focus on
Mhm.
doing my own stuff. So yeah,
Mm.
but for the 5 words, it's I would say it's kind of middle of the playtest, but a lot of the bad parts I think are being solved with. I'm like actually I have like 80 mails that I have to reply that people send me in the last couple of days that I went over. I'm taking notes, but I haven't replied yet. So, but yeah, there's a lot of
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
things.
So awesome.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll end off with this open-ended question of future collab between you guys.
Anything is
Okay.
absolutely possible.
Yes.
When it's so the thing, I guess, is a little, like behind the curtains, because the distinction between doing something completely independently, like now that we're updating like Clash on the Fringe, like the only people who have to make a decision of that was like me and Jason to do that. Whereas when it's something that's going through a publisher, then it also needs to be something that like the publisher is interested in. And they're the money guys, so they have an idea of like what will probably sell 3,000 books and what will sell 3 books, and they're not super keen on paying whatever per word for the if you're only going to sell 3 books. But yeah, like one of the things that I think they're kind of like inching towards is the idea that like 5X becomes this kind of like space that like can pull things in. Modifius has like a huge interest in like pulling up like indie authors, pulling in like weird random projects. So yeah, nothing is definitely impossible. I've learned to like hedge everything I say, because if it sounds like I say something's gonna happen, like 3 years from now, somebody will be like in my email opining that it's been 3 years, and I'm already bad enough about the things that I definitely know I want to do, and then they get delayed for like years. So yeah, I'm gonna be cagey, but absolutely everything is possible. I did have the good fortune of reading through I don't know if it's the same version that went out to playtesters or if it was like a later version or what, of your game. So I was really excited about that. Sometimes
Yeah,
it's
a lot of the comments I went over then before sending. There's a lot of tweaks that you suggested or things to change to the name and all that
Mhm.
that I did that before sending.
Yeah. And it's also like a lot of it is again for people who are interested in providing feedback and playtesting for whether it's independent or more like there is like I said before, anything that like at the end of the day, like there has to be a rule that's on the page. Hopefully, it's the best version of that rule, but it's not always. Or there was a different version that was like just as good, or was like 95% as good, but it had like 105% of the work or whatever. Like there could be so many. That's why I always try to like jam optional rules in there and some variations, and so people can like tinker and tailor. Because a lot of times it's like, well, this didn't quite work, but it's not a bad idea, so that can go in an optional rule. Some nerd will want it.
Yeah, in RPGs in general have a lot of that, and I mean, in the latest episodes of my 5 Parsecs videos, I started changing rules or adding new things or things like that, exactly because it feels like it would make sense for this moment where I'm playing or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I feel
That's the
it's
thing,
good to have.
especially when you're doing it solo, because you're kind of like game mastering for
Yeah,
yourself. We've talked about that before with like having story points in the game and stuff. Like for some people, like changing the rules, even though it's a solo game, is like you're not supposed to do that. So putting in story points, it says like you can just pay a point and then you can cheat. And for a lot of people, it like gets them over the hump and say, oh, okay, well in that case, I can make up that this mission takes place on a lava planet and the bad guy has a because you authorize them to pay a point and then change the game in some way. And other people will just do it anyway. It's just natural to them. So it's just a weird, like, psychological thing.
All right.
So Lancelot just left to go bother my wife while she is at work. So I definitely need to...
Well, when Lancelot gives up, we know it's time to wrap up the show.
Well, what it means is now he's just going to be convoying up and down the stairs for the next hour until somebody gets in and feeds him. So I will have to cut it short here. But it was a pleasure to talk to you. We could probably spend like another 12 hours gibbering about design ideas and stuff.
Great for the invitation. Good to meet you guys personally and have a chat.
Yeah. So, good to meet you. Absolutely.
And
if you don't hate us, you can always come back again. So there we go.
Just answer my question of where you were from. Like I said, I couldn't figure it out, but now it makes total sense. So.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks, everyone. We do the little hearts out. So everyone gives a little heart for the audience. And we see you later. Bye-bye.
This episode of Bad Internet Friends was streamed live on YouTube and Twitch. There is a North American-friendly live stream every second Wednesday of the month and a European-friendly live stream every fourth Monday of the month.